Crime in Tarneit has more than doubled in 5 years. What does the crime data look like at the street level, not the suburb level? The Westgate Tunnel opened the same month. $10.2 billion connects the inner west. Total recorded offences in Tarneit, 4,587. There is no business case, no funding, no construction timeline. That makes it the single fastest growing SA2 in Greater Melbourne. 5 of the 10 fastest growing suburbs in Australia are all in the same corner of the city. Melbourne's West, Tarneit, Trigunina, Rockbank, Wyndham Vale, Fraser Rise. More people moved to these 5 suburbs last year than to the entire Northern Territory. But here's the part nobody is talking about and show you on the property news. One of the suburbs, the fastest growing one, has a red flag in the data that almost no buyer is checking before they sign. I'm going to show you the suburb, show you the data, show you exactly what the crime statistics agency Victoria released 6 weeks ago. That should change how you think about the corridor. Let's test the claim, because fastest growing is one of those phrases that gets thrown around with no source. I went to 2 places, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the regional population release for 2024-2025, published last month, and the Totality Home Value Index, January and April 2026, and the data tells you 2 completely different stories. On capital growth, house price growth, Melbourne is the slowest capital in Australia, up just 4.8% for the last year. Perth was 24%, up. Brisbane, Adelaide, Darwin, all double digits. But on population growth, actual people moving in, Melbourne's western corridor isn't just leading, it's dominating. Tarneit North added 18% to its population in 12 months. 18%. That makes it the single fastest growing SA2 in Greater Melbourne and top 5 SA2 in the entire region. Rockbank, Mount Cottrell added the largest absolute number of internal migrants of any SA2 in Greater Melbourne. 3,500 people relocating into one statistical area. And when you zoom out to the whole country, 5 of the top 10 fastest growing SA2s in Australia, half are in Melbourne's west or northwest. So the claim is true with the caveat. Melbourne West is fastest growing region in Australia by population. It's not the fastest by capital growth. And that gap, that divergence is itself the story we'll come back to. Let me show you the corridor, because once you see it on a map, it makes more sense. The west of Melbourne is 2 cities. The city of Wyndham, Tarneit, Trigunina, Werribee, Point Cook, Wyndham Vale. And the city of Melton, Melton South, Rockbank, Caroline Springs. Together, these 2 LGAs are adding up more people every single year than most Australian states. Here are the medians as of Q1 2026, sourced from Totality and REIV. Tarneit, 650,000 to 740,000. Trigunina, around 620,000. Wyndham Vale, around 610,000. Melton South, 470,000. Rockbank, around 550,000. Werribee, 628,000. Compare that to the Greater Melbourne house median, which is 977,000. Every single of these suburbs is between 20 and 50% below the metro median, which is exactly why the first home buyers and investors with small deposits are flooding in. The yields are also stronger here. Outer west corridors are running 4 to 4.5% gross. Inner Melbourne is close to 3.6. So the math on the surface looks great. Cheap entry, strong yields, massive population tailwind is the textbook case for buying in the corridor. But that's the surface. Here is what happens when you look underneath. Before I name the suburb, let me show you how I tested. Because I'm going to put a red flag on a place where 40,000 people live, I would have my methodology straight. I checked 7 categories of risk. Each one has a primary source. No vibes, no opinions. First one is crime. Crime Statistics Agency Victoria, December 2025, released 2 oversupply and rental good. SQM Research vacancy rates. 3 environmental risk. EPA Victoria Country Fire Authority maps. The Victorian Ombudsman report. 4 infrastructure gap. Big build project list. And the Victorian Department of Transport. 5 socio-economic concentration. The ABS SEIFA index from 2021 census. 6 affordability deterioration. Median price to income ratios. 7 the growth areas infrastructure contribution, the GAIC. The cost layer that only exists in Victorian growth corridors. Of those 7, only one category produced a single strong, so well documented and so far above the average that I'm willing to put it on a thumbnail. Crime in one specific suburb. The suburb is Tarneit, postcode 3029, city of Wyndham, roughly 50,000 residents, the fastest growing SR2 in Greater Melbourne. Here is what the Crime Statistics Agency released in March of this year, or the year ending December 2025. Total recorded offences in Tarneit 4,587, year-on-year change, plus 20.6%, 5-year change, plus 101%. Crime in Tarneit has more than doubled in 5 years. When you convert that to a rate per 1,000 residents, Tarneit is sitting at roughly 16,000 to 200 offices, 100 per 1,000. The Victorian state average, the entire state, is just under 9,000. Tarneit is running at a roughly 1.8 times the state rate, 80% above. The dominant offense category is property and deception. 6,000 reports. Stealing from a motor vehicle is the single fastest growing offense type across all Victoria. And the Crime Statistics Agency Deputy Commissioner said in his December statement that it's being driven by theft of number plates and power tools out of youths parked in driveways, which in a corridor full of new estates with single carports is structurally the worst possible setup. Crime against the person, assaults, family violence is also above the state rate, around 2,400 per 100,000 against the state rate of 1,500. And before anyone says, well, it's just because the population grew so fast that the crime numbers grew too. That's not what's happening. The rate is what per 100,000. It accounts for the population. The crime rate has grown faster than the population. Now crime is one red flag. The second, and it compounds the first. Look where Victoria is spending its infrastructure. The Metro Tunnel opened December 2025. Inner City plus the Sunshine Catchment. The Westgate Tunnel opened the same month. $10.2 billion connects the Inner West. The Suburban Rail Loop East, under construction now. From Cheltenham to Box Hill, the eastern suburbs. The Suburban Rail Loop North in procurement. From Box Hill to Melbourne Airport, and the Suburban Rail Loop West from Sunshine to Werribee through Tarneit and Wyndham Vale. There is no business case, no funding, no construction timeline. The state opposition has committed to halting all SRL development if they win the November state election. So the suburbs that are growing in the fastest in Australia, adding 50,000 people every couple of years, are scheduled to receive their major rail upgrade sometime in the late 2030s or 2040s, if at all. That's the second red flag, not a crime, infrastructure absence. And it's the reason that capital growth in this corridor is structurally lower than the population growth would suggest. Buyers are pricing in the gap. 3 quick rebuttals, because I know what you are thinking. What about Footscray? Isn't there a PFAS contamination there? Yes. The Westgate Tunnel project exposed that a legacy industrial site in Footscray, Yarraville and Brooklyn have PFAS contamination in some samples, 2,000 times the EPA drinking water trigger. The Victorian Ombudsman called the EPA's handling of it scathing. That's a real risk. But Footscray isn't the fastest growing suburb in Australia. It's a mature, gentrifying suburb, so it doesn't fit the headline. What about Melton? Isn't that the most disadvantaged LGA in the Victoria's growth corridor? It is. Melton SEIFA scores 6 below the Victorian average, the real socioeconomic concentration risk. But Melton's population growth, while strong, isn't at the top 5 SA2s in Tarneit North is. What about Trigunina or Wyndham Vale? Trigunina, crime is up 15.9% year on year, which is concerning, but on a smaller absolute base. Wyndham Vale doesn't have the same crime trajectory. Neither hits the same combination of the growth, speed plus crime severity that Tarneit does. Tarneit was the only suburb that simultaneously satisfied number 1, top 5 fastest growing SA2 in the country, number 2, a primary source documentary crime list that is 80% above the correct state rate, and number 3, a structural infrastructure deficit that won't resolve before 2040. That's why it's the suburb on the thumbnail. So here's the next house view. My genuine take. It's not an advice. Tarneit is not a no-go. It's a place where 40,000 people live, have built lives, and it has a real upside, cheap entry, strong yields, the largest population tailwind in the country. But if you're a buyer or investor looking for this corridor right now, these are the questions I would want to be answered before I sign anything. What does the crime data look like? at the street level, not the suburb level. Because Tarneit North and Tarneit Central have very different profiles. What's the year built on the property, new estates, the single carports are exactly where the stealing with the motor vehicles category is concentrated. And what's your hold horizon? Because if you're banking on the SRL West to deliver capital growth, you're banking on a project that doesn't have a business case yet. I covered full data, suburb by suburb breakdown, the broker grade infrastructure timeline, the year-on-year crime tables in the free Melbourne suburb Western Corridor report on the website. Link is in the description and pinned in the bottom comment. If this was useful, please hit subscribe. I publish our deep dives like this every week, and the only way I can keep going independent if your channel grows. I'll see you in the next one. Anything what I said in this channel is not a financial advice, it's just a general information on you. Thank you.